Okay, so in today's video, I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is how to save money and spend money at the same time. Now, this is going to be a really useful video for you if you struggle with striking the balance between saving for your future versus living for today. And to be honest, this is definitely something that I struggled with. So a few years ago, when I started learning about personal finance, before that, I hadn't really focused on saving for my future at all. Saving money was just non-existent. And so I used to spend every penny I had. But then when I started learning more about managing money, I almost went to the other extreme where I thought that I had to be saving every single penny and that I couldn't spend money at all. Until I started thinking about it more deeply and I asked myself, well, what if I could do both? What if I could still save a decent amount of income so I could work towards some of these financial goals, but at the same time, it didn't have to be at a detriment to my spending? What if I could still enjoy my money for today at the same time? So if you're someone who has that exact question and you're trying to figure out how you can save and spend money, then keep on watching. Okay, so the first tip I want to give you when it comes to spending money and saving money at the same time is to first figure out whether you're actually happy with the way that you're spending money. Now, when I'm talking about figuring out whether you're happy with your spending, you might first of all be like, oh no, of course I'll be happy with how I spend my money because it's my money and I deserve it. When in reality, sometimes we don't realize that we spend money on any random thing, and sometimes we're just not happy with the way we actually spent money. However, we don't remember. So one of the best things you can do is actually have a look at your expenses. So every single time I work with a client, I will literally get them to look at their past expenses for the past month and see whether they were happy with spending that money. And 9 times out of 10, there is usually one thing that they didn't realize they spent money on and they weren't happy with it. And this actually happened to me. So when I started looking through my expenses, I realized that I was spending a lot of money on clothes. But the thing is that I wasn't actually wearing half of these clothes I bought, and I was questioning, why did I buy these clothes? Well, it turns out the reason why I bought them was simply because they were on sale. So because I thought I was getting a bargain, I decided to buy so many different clothes, not realizing that number one, I wouldn't like half of the things I bought anyway, or number two, I would just forget to wear them. But I didn't realize this until I'd actually looked at my expenses and figured out whether I was happy with my spending. So if you're someone who is trying to figure out how to actually save money and spend at the same time, one of the key things you might need to do is actually think about your spending, because if you cannot control your spending, it is going to be very difficult for you to actually save that money and keep those savings too. Now, it's really important to realize that I'm not saying you will have to completely cut back on all of your spending, but what I'm saying is that if you do this exercise, you will start to understand what you value when it comes to spending money, and you will then start to think about spending money on things that are a lot more important to you, rather than spending money on all of these random things that probably don't make you happy anyway. And if you're liking this video so far, then feel free to give me a thumbs up, as it really does help to support the channel, plus it's free. So as a practical example, what I will do is I will tell my clients just to have a look at their bank statement and list out what they did, and we can put them in categories. So we will see how often you went out to eat, how much you spent on groceries, how much you spent on transport, whether you bought any clothes during that month. And again, it's not for us to say, oh, you went out to this restaurant, so that's really bad. No, because obviously you do want to enjoy your life. Let's be honest, we're not just going to be sitting at home all the time. However, what this exercise does is you will then start to see patterns, and you will start to see how often you maybe do things. So for example, you may find that you typically go to the grocery store 4 or 5 times a week. And so because you do that, you then end up buying more food than you anticipated. And so you may end up overspending on food and not realizing it, but it's because you go to the grocery store very often. And so what I would then ask is, are you happy with how often you're going? Are you happy with how much you're now spending on food? food. If you're not happy with that, then that's the problem that we need to fix. But if you are happy with that, then that's fine. We just need to make sure that we set up a plan for it so you don't end up overspending. But can you see how when you're thinking about spending money, it's not about whether spending money is bad or not, but it's about whether you are happy with the way that you're personally spending your money. So this is a great exercise that I do with my clients all the time. So if you do want to learn more about one-on-one money coaching, I will leave a link in the description below for you. But figuring out whether you're happy with your spending is one of the first things that you'll need to do, because you need to be able to control your spending so that you actually have some money to save. So if you're someone who finds that you probably overspend in some areas, you really want to focus on that first before you now start thinking about how you can actually save some money too. Okay, so the next tip I have for you when it comes to saving money and spending money at the same time is to figure out and be clear on your savings goals. Now, this is something that I mentioned in my previous video where I was talking about how to save money for multiple things. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave it up here for you and in the description below. But essentially, when it comes to saving and spending at the same time, one of the things that you're going to need to focus on is figuring out how much should you be saving so that you can understand whether you can realistically save money and also spend at the same time. Now, when I'm talking about being clear on your savings goals, this doesn't have to be so set in stone. So you don't have to have the exact number that will never change, because of course your goals can change, your goals can adapt, and that's absolutely fine. But what I'm saying is, by having some of those savings goals, this can give you guidance so that you know if you're on the right track. So if, for example, you're trying to save up for a wedding, you won't necessarily know how much you need to be saving maybe every month until you realize how much you need to save up roughly for the entire wedding. So for example, if let's say that the wedding is going to cost 10k, so that's your savings goal, well then if you know that you want to be able to save up 10k within the next 10 months, then maybe you'll tell yourself, okay, that means that I need to be saving about 1k each month if I want to hit the goal. But it's a lot easier for you to figure out how much you should be saving if you already know what your savings goal is. And also, I would say that when you're a lot more clear on your savings goals, this actually then allows you to be able to spend money at the same time. Because I think one of the biggest thing that paralyzes us is when we don't know how much we're saving, we then don't end up saving that money, and then we feel guilty thinking that, oh, we should be saving money, but we're spending that money instead because we didn't know how much we should be saving in the first place. And so if you're someone who is constantly feeling guilty about spending money, so you spend money but you don't like how you spent your money, so because you feel so guilty you end up spending more. If you want to stop that vicious cycle, it is really good to have a clear idea on how much you should be saving so that you can understand whether you're on track. And that is exactly why I never feel guilty about spending my money, and how I'm able to spend and save at the same time. The reason is because I already know how much I should be saving. And so if I already know how much I should be saving and I make that happen, well then the rest of the money is there to be spent, and the rest of the money can be spent guilt-free. Now, the next tip I want to give you if you're trying to spend and save money at the same time is to make a plan. Plan, 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 plan. How many times can I say plan in this video? Now, I will say that I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make is that we just don't plan out our finances. And I think it's just simply because we don't really know how to. But when it comes to planning out your money, the reason why you want to do that is because you want to be able to tell your money where to go, rather than your money just freely being everywhere and not realizing where your money is going, and then at the end of the month you get upset because you didn't save money and you have no idea what you spent that money on either. So if you're someone who is in that position, one of the best things you can do is make a plan. Now, I would say there are two types of plans that you want to make. You want to make a plan for your savings, and you also want to make a plan for your spending too. So when we're talking about making a plan for your savings, if I link this back to the previous point where I was talking about being clear on your savings goals, when you have those savings goals, you want to ask yourself, okay, well, what's my plan to be able to reach that savings goal. So for example, in my case, I knew that I really wanted to save up for an emergency fund. I wanted to save up 3K for an initial emergency fund. So that was my savings goal. However, my plan to actually reach that savings goal, so my plan to actually save up for that emergency fund, was for me to then save 1K per month for the next 3 months. So I knew that I wanted to have that emergency fund saved in the next 3 months. And in order for me to do that, it meant that I would have to save over 1 grand every single month for the next 3 months. That is what I mean by planning out your saving. It is not just you saying, oh, I would love to just save for my house deposit. No, what's the plan? What are you planning to do? And again, plans can change. I'm not saying that when you have your plan is set in stone and you can't do anything about it. No, your plan can absolutely change. There may be times where your income fluctuates. Maybe you can save a bit more during one time of the year and a bit less during another time of the year. That is absolutely fine. But what helps is you just having an initial plan so that you can now start to see whether it is feasible for you to reach some of those savings goals and for you to still be able to spend at the same time. So really start thinking about your savings plan. How are you planning to actually reach your savings goals? What are you planning to do with your money? Then the other thing that you want to be thinking about is how you can actually plan your spending. And I will say, majority of my clients before they work with me probably haven't planned their spending at all. This is something that they have to start from scratch. But actually they realize that by planning out their spending, first of all, they feel a lot better about their spending and they are less likely to feel guilty about their spending because they know it is already planned for. So do not underestimate the power of planning out your spending because it can actually help you, especially if you are a natural spender like me, okay? For me personally, planning my spending was one of the best things I could do because I was then able to stop feeling so guilty about spending my money, but I was also able to enjoy spending my money mainly because I planned for it. That's it. Just because I simply made a plan. So when we're talking about planning your spending, what I'm saying is, what do you plan on doing with your money? How do you want to spend your money over the next week or month? How much do you want to spend on eating out, on groceries, on transport, on clothes, on miscellaneous? Because you might come to me saying that, oh, sometimes I do random things in the month. That's fine. Plan for that too, okay? So really just ask yourself, how do I want to spend my money? And that is essentially what I mean when I'm talking about planning your spending. Because if you do that, you're less likely to end up overspending, but also you'll then be able to see whether you can save that money and spend that money at the same time. It is definitely feasible to do both, but one of the biggest reasons why people can't do it is because they do not have a plan. Now, if you're someone who realizes that you do want to be able to save a lot more money, but you want to be able to do it without actually restricting your spending. So you want to be able to save your money and spend that money at the same time, but maybe you just need a bit more help with that, then make sure you do check out my one-on-one coaching, because what I've been able to do is help every single client save more money, but they've also been able to enjoy their spending too. So make sure you check that out if you haven't already. What you can do is book a free call just to find out more about working with me. So I'll link more information up here for you and in the description below. But when it comes to saving money and spending money at the same time, it does not have to be an either or. You can make sure that not only are you still saving towards some of your financial goals, but it's not at a detriment to your spending too. You can still enjoy today while saving for your financial future. What you really want to do is think about whether you're happy with the way you're spending money, you want to be clear on your savings goals, and you also want to be able to plan for both your savings and your spending as well. So if you did like this video, then please do give me a thumbs up if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments, do you find it difficult to save and spend at the same time? I do post every Tuesday, so if you would like to know more, then of course you can subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys next week.